My name is Joe Massaro. For those I haven't met, I'm the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. And it is my pleasure to just welcome everyone today and to introduce our speakers. This is a gathering that's intended to be informational for our members. And so if there's anyone as part of the press or someone who's not a member, this is an off-the-record conversation. If you'd like to engage us on the record, we're available to you. The staff is available for comment and additional information. So please reach out to us and we'll be happy to entertain your questions. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's presenters. We have Lauren Brinjack and Zach Pizek from our government affairs team here at PRLA. We're very fortunate to have two very professional, capable, and experienced government affairs professionals with us, and they're guiding our strategy and interacting with our elected officials to be sure that the policy priorities our members have set are top of mind with our elected officials as legislation and policy is developed. Along with the strength of our outsourced contract lobbyist at Greenlee Associates, we have a very strong team and a terrific presence and honestly a great deal of respect on the Hill. And that's something that I've come to learn pretty quickly as I've joined the team. Folks know who PRLA is, they know who you are, and the relationships that have been developed by Zach and Lauren and the team is allowing your voice to be heard at the Capitol and in our major cities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren and Zach to proceed with today's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be back with all of you in the new year for another PRLA Government Affairs update. I'm Lauren Brinjack, PRLA's Senior Director of Legislative Affairs, and I'm going to kick things off this morning with a bit of a federal update. So the 118th Congress began last month with a divided government, and as you'll likely recall, after the midterm elections back in November, Democrats retained the majority in the Senate and Republicans took control of the House with a margin of 222 to 213 Democrats. Kevin McCarthy was finally elected Speaker of the House, although it took 15 floor votes to get there. A few of the issues of interest to our members this year at the beginning of the year that we and our partners at the National Restaurant Association are tracking include the Restaurant Revitalization Tax Credit Act reintroduction. Last week, Senators Ben Cardin, who is chair of the Senate Committee on Small Business, Patty Murray from Washington, and Sherrod Brown from Ohio reintroduced the Restaurant Revitalization Tax Credit Act. And this legislation, which I'll note did not pass in the last Congress, would create a special tax credit for businesses that were approved but did not end up receiving any money through the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, or the RRF. Now, as explained by the National Restaurant Association, the tax credit would be available to eligible employers to offset payroll taxes of up to $25,000 per quarter in calendar year 2023. For businesses with 10 or fewer employees, the credit would be refundable up to a total of $25,000 over the course of the year, with a cap on refundability gradually phased out for businesses with fewer than 20 employees. Additionally, restaurants must have experienced average operating losses of at least 30% in 2020 and 2021 as compared to 2019, or losses of at least 50% in either calendar years 2020 or 2021 as compared to 2019. And as a reminder, this is legislation that was introduced last year and did not pass the last Congress. So we don't want to get anyone's hopes up too high about this legislation, but it is something that we are supportive of and hope may see some interest this year. Another issue that I'd like to put on your radar, especially for our restaurants and our caterers, is the Food Donation Improvement Act. Prior to adjourning late in December, the previous Congress passed the Food Donation Improvement Act, And this expands liability protections to specifically include donations of an apparently fit grocery product or apparently wholesome food that is donated directly to a needy individual by a retail grocer, wholesaler, agricultural producer, restaurant, caterer, school food authority, or institution of higher education. This will afford some protections to those who may wish to donate food, but hesitate to do so out of fear that they may be held liable if someone should become ill. We think that this will be something helpful to our members, and once the Department of Agriculture issues regulations, the National Restaurant Association is going to be creating some resources to help our members understand how they can benefit from this new law. One more issue I'd like to put on everyone's radar that we are going to be advocating for is the Credit Card Competition Act. This legislation did not make it over the finish line last year, but I think there's certainly going to be another push for it this year. As a reminder, this legislation would require card issuing banks to allow merchants to choose between at least 2 unaffiliated networks to route their credit card transactions, which will create more competition within this ecosystem and ultimately, hopefully, drive down fees. Last on my list, I'd like everyone to mark your calendars for the National Restaurant Association's 2023 Public Affairs Conference in Washington, D.C., taking place June 19th through the 21st. Registration is already open on the association's website. We took a great group with us to DC last year. I think we had a really successful event, and we are hoping to do that again this summer. Looking forward to seeing many of you at that event. And now I will hand things over to Zach.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you very much, Joe, for the kind words earlier. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year, and of course, happy Webinar Wednesday. It's great to be back. I feel like we blinked, and now all of a sudden it's February. Like Lauren noted, we've got new elected officials, we've got new administration in town, we've got new challenges, and also new opportunities. And as we get ready to talk a little bit about tourism, I cannot forget to mention that we've got some new NFC champs in town as well, with the Philadelphia Eagles heading to the 2023 Super Bowl, which is really exciting for our state and especially our partners and operators in Philadelphia. I want to start here with a federal update on travel and tourism. So I've been saying there's a lot of new stuff happening, and you might not have thought that also meant a completely new administrative position at the federal level as it relates to travel and tourism, due to the efforts of our national partners, the PRLA, and also other groups like U.S. Travel, Destinations International, AHOA as well. This is an effort that we've been at for about 30 years now. In December, Congress passed and the president enacted legislation that created a new Assistant Secretary of Travel and Tourism at the U.S. Department of Commerce. The first time a position like this has existed in U.S. history. Tourism having a bigger seat at the table will undoubtedly help our broader advocacy efforts. I was looking back a little bit at the advocacy work that's been done over the last few decades, and based on my research, it looks like this conversation first started in the Bill Clinton administration, right before Atlanta had hosted the Olympics in 1996. This will be a presidentially appointed U.S. Senate confirmed position to lead travel and tourism policy at the federal level. So some very exciting stuff happening with the feds as part of the Omnibus Travel and Tourism Act, which is now part of law. Their job will be to enhance domestic travel and tourism by creating goals for international visitation and travel and tourism exports. They're going to guide the tourism strategy for the country, and they're going to work closely with the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Transportation, et cetera. They're going to help guide air travel in and out of the United States. Certainly something we're going to keep a close eye on as news develops on that subject. You may also remember us some time ago discussing legislation known as the Infrastructure and Inflation Reduction Act, or the infrastructure law. There were billions of dollars in federal assistance money appropriated in that legislation. For instance, a $1.5 billion grant program funding to help communities around the country carry out various projects at the regional and local level that would have impact. Tons of money being spent on various infrastructure projects at airports, trains, travel, and tourism in general. I've heard from a lot of members with questions about various projects in their local municipalities, how they might be able to somehow relate to this legislation or how it might impact their operations. I'm not going to take necessarily a deep dive on this webinar, but I want you all to keep in mind that you can, of course, contact us at PRLA if there's anything we could help address or anything we could help navigate. At the local and regional level, I know there's some talk, for instance, about the Scranton, New York City Amtrak line that is still in the works. Discussions are still in the works. I actually just recently saw a petition circulating that some legislators had distributed via email and on social media. So that's something that's definitely related to this conversation. Additional passenger travel via rail from, say, southeastern PA through Reading to Harrisburg. That's part of this conversation. So ultimately, if there's anything that PRLA can do to help navigate those conversations with your local legislators and your state legislators, please feel free to reach out to us. We've been helping many in the DMO community engage their county commissioners on this subject. PRLA is happy to help however we can. Lastly, on this slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about the AHLA Day on the Hill event. Exciting news coming from our national partners, the AHLA. The AHLA Hotels on the Hill event has officially returned, and it's going to be in person. Some of you may remember that the last time they hosted this event was in 2021, and it was hosted virtually. Hoteliers will be hitting the Hill down in Washington, D.C., and PRLA plans to be right there with you. A few of us from the team will be traveling to D.C. and assisting with meetings. We'll also be helping coordinate those meetings. The event kicks off on May 15th with a networking reception, followed by a full day of informational sessions preparing attendees for what will ultimately be the third day on the Hill when we head to the Capitol. Again, the event is from May 15th to 17th. And in a moment here, I'll be able to throw a registration link in the chat. And if you visit that landing page, there'll also be some additional detail for those in the lodging community who might be interested in joining us down in DC. And with that, I want to move on to some state issues. And no better place to start than with Governor Shapiro. Governor Shapiro was sworn in as Pennsylvania's new governor on Tuesday, January 17th. PRLA attended multiple inaugural events on the Hill that day. It was great to be in town and connecting with so many new legislators. The administration has started falling into place. DCED has a new secretary, Acting Secretary Rick Seiger from Western Pennsylvania. We are very excited to work with Secretary Seiger in this new role. The Department of Revenue has a new secretary, a very familiar name, former State Senator Pat Brown from the Lehigh Valley was tapped as the next Secretary of Revenue. That's a department, as you can imagine, we work with quite closely. And then in the Department of Agriculture, Secretary Russell Redding will remain at the helm in the Department of Ag. So excited to continue our work with Secretary Redding, who's been very supportive of the industry in the past and always a great partner. The strategy to engage the administration is multi-tiered. For starters, from PRLA's perspective, of course, want to build a very solid relationship with the governor. We hope to have an introductory meeting within the next couple of weeks about our priorities. We believe there's significant value in finding common ground. Tourism funding is a subject we're very confident, given his past work on the issue, that the governor will be interested in. Combating human trafficking, especially in the lodging industry, is a subject we know we also may be able to have some discussion on. The second part of the strategy is using our relationships with members of the General Assembly who are already familiar with our legislative priorities to help us create opportunities with the administration. We have so many champions in the General Assembly, and so many of them are eager to help PRLA and the operators we represent. And we hope we can use those relationships to also create a new relationship with Governor Shapiro. And then lastly, we continue to meet regularly on a quarterly basis with many of our partners in DCED, the Tourism Office, DCNR, the Department of Labor and Industry. In his career, many of you probably know that Governor Shapiro has been a big supporter of travel and tourism. We expect there to be some common ground in that area. He was instrumental with some of the efforts in Valley Forge back when he was chair of the Board of Commissioners in Montgomery County and just in general as a commissioner in Montgomery County. What we're seeing, while of course there are a lot of changes within the administration, it's also worth noting that there's been some continuity as well. The Secretary of Agriculture is a good example, someone who was there under the Wolf administration will be returning. I think there's been a very good balance between a fresh perspective, but just retention of a lot of that institutional knowledge that's there as well. Given that Governor Shapiro and Governor Wolf were of the same party, I think that has to do with why we haven't necessarily seen as many turnovers as you would ordinarily see when administrations transition, like when we saw outgoing Governor Corbett and the transition to new Governor Wolf. Governor Shapiro, this is a recent announcement, some official action by the governor. Governor Shapiro signed an executive order last week establishing the Pennsylvania Office of Transformation and Opportunity. This will be within the governor's Office of Economic Development Strategy Group. Along with the PA Chamber, it was discussed as a one-stop shop for businesses that are looking to grow and expand. Ben Kirshner, who is an entrepreneur and a business leader here in the Commonwealth, was named the role of Chief Transformation and Opportunity Officer. This office is going to help with expediting permits, the review process, licensing, et cetera, things in that category. And it's very, I think most of our members, at least that I've heard from so far, it's just refreshing to see that a lot of these business concerns so far seem to be top of mind for Governor Shapiro. Additionally, this is kind of hot off the press here. Just yesterday, Governor Shapiro signed an executive order to improve licensing and permitting here in Pennsylvania. It's going to start with a comprehensive review of how long it takes agencies currently to process apps and how workers and businesses apply online, what that process looks like. But throughout the process, the order also requires that they establish a date certain for each license, permit, certificate by which applicants will hear back. And if the applicant, from what I understand, if the applicants do not receive a response by the date that they were told they'd receive a response by, the agency is going to be responsible for refunding that application fee. And so again, just another element here in his first couple weeks here of official action. Business concerns really do seem to be top of mind, and a lot of changes happening on that front. We'll include additional information on this stuff in the daily update. And now I want to flip it back over to Lauren to talk about our friends in the House and what's happening in the General Assembly.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. So Kevin McCarthy's drama-filled path to becoming Speaker of the U.S. House was really nothing compared to what we've got going on here in our state house, where the two parties are still wrangling over who's actually in control of the chamber. In a nutshell, or at least as much of a nutshell as possible, back in November, Democrats outperformed almost everyone's expectations by winning 102 seats in the House, flipping the chamber away from Republican control for the first time in over a decade. However, as of swearing-in day in early January, 3 of those seats were vacant. One legislator was elected posthumously. At the time that he unfortunately passed away, it was too late to take his name off the ballot, and he was subsequently reelected. The 2 other seats were vacated by state House members who ran for their House seat as well as another seat. And that was Representative Austin Davis, who was also elected lieutenant governor, and Representative Summer Lee, who won a seat in Congress. So because of this, on swearing-in day, Republicans had the technical majority in the House with 101 seats to the Democrats' 99 seats, with both parties claiming control of the chamber. Because of this struggle when it came to electing the Speaker of the House that day, a compromise candidate emerged late in the day who was a surprise to almost everyone. And that was Representative Mark Rossi, a Democrat from Berks County, who was nominated by Republican Representative Jim Gregory. Representative Rossi won the support of all of the Democrats as well as 16 Republicans, including the Republican leadership team. In his acceptance speech, Representative Rossi pledged to serve as an independent speaker, not caucusing with either party. Although it quickly became apparent that there were some differing understandings as to whether Representative Rozzi had promised to be a big I independent, meaning that he would actually leave the Democratic Party, or whether he planned to serve as an independent in spirit and remain in the Democratic Party. As of now, Representative Rozzi remains a registered Democrat, and as Speaker, he has adjourned session until February 27th. The House at this point is still without operating rules, it's without a House calendar, and it's without a full list of committee assignments. However, next week on February 7th, the special elections for the 3 vacant seats will take place, and those results are going to add some certainty to the question of who is in control of the chamber. I'll note that all 3 of those seats are heavily favored to be retained by the Democrats. And in the most recent twist in all of this is that yesterday, Republican Representative Linda Schlegel-Culver won a special election for an open Senate seat. So she will soon be resigning from her House seat, creating yet another vacancy that will need to be filled by a special election. Now, Republican leaders, House leaders, for their part, have been arguing that the House should return to session now to begin conducting business. And to that end, they recently announced their picks for committee chairs. So of particular note to our PRLA members, Representative Seth Grove from York County is going to be the Republican Appropriations Chair. Ryan McKenzie from Lehigh County will be chair of the Labor and Industry Committee. Representative Mindy Fee from Lancaster will be chair of the Liquor Control Committee. And Representative Donna Oberlander from Armstrong and Clarion will be chair of the Tourism and Recreational Development Committee. So needless to say, there is a lot going on in the House right now, a lot that is still up in the air with some big questions to still be answered. But for now, I will turn it back to Zach to talk a bit about the state Senate, which is much tamer by comparison.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And what I would add about the House, and many of you on this call, I know already know this, but what I'll note is it's really unprecedented what we're seeing in the House. It's really something we've never seen here in Pennsylvania. And I don't know if we've seen it nationally. And it's like Lauren noted, operating with no rules right now, no committee structure. We've started having meetings with some of the executive directors and some of the staff in the House, and it seems that things are just as unclear to all of them right now as they are to the public and all of us. So it seems to have been a full-time beat in most newsrooms lately, but we'll certainly keep you all posted on anything that transpires in the House. In the Senate, there has been some recent productivity there. They selected 2023 leadership and also established 2023 legislative committees, which obviously make planning for PRLA's purposes and some of our legislative initiatives a little easier. In leadership roles in the Republican caucus, the majority caucus, they have a 27-22 majority right now. It'll likely go back to a 28-22 majority. The Republicans had elected, well, the Senate had elected President Pro Temp Senator Kim Ward as the next President Pro Temp. Senate Majority Leader will be Senator Joe Pittman. The Republican Caucus Majority Whip will be State Senator Ryan Aument from Lancaster, and then the new Appropriations Chair, replacing former State Senator Pat Brown, will now be Senator Scott Martin, also from Lancaster. And so you might notice between Senator Aument and Senator Martin, the Lancaster delegation has quite a significant seat at the leadership table in the Senate. And I thought that's worth noting for many of our partners in Lancaster. In the Democratic caucus, they did re-elect State Senator Jay Costa as the Senate Minority Caucus leader. Senator Costa has served for quite some time in that role and was re-elected. The new whip will be Senator Christine Tartaglione from the Philadelphia area. And then the Appropriations Chair, the Minority Appropriations Chair for the Senate Democratic Caucus will remain Senator Vince Hughes, who represents parts of Philadelphia and then also a small part of Montgomery County, specifically, I believe it's Conshohocken. Some committee Notes that are worth mentioning: Senator Chris Gebhard and Senator Anthony Williams will serve as majority and minority chairs, respectively, of the Senate Committee on Community, Economic, and Recreational Development. They will be replacing outgoing State Senator John Udicak and also State Senator Capoletti. Senator Regan and Senator Brewster will remain majority and minority chair of the Senate Law and Justice Committee. And then Senator Devlin Robinson will be majority chair of the Senate Committee on Labor and Industry, joined by Senator John Kane from Delaware County, who will serve as the minority chair for that committee. So another committee with new leadership there as well. While discussing the Senate, like Lauren noted, I should note that there was that special election in the 27th Senate district yesterday. That was the election to replace outgoing Republican State Senator John Gordner. Senator Gordner had resigned last year to become counsel to Senate President Pro Tem Kim Ward. And so like Lauren and I had mentioned, the R's had currently a 27-22 majority. So certainly less significant in terms of a majority battle here in the Senate than it is in the House. But that election did take place. The GOP had a 2-to-1 voter registration advantage, and like Lauren noted, Rep. Culver has declared victory, was the Republican nominee. And last I looked, while votes are still coming in, it does seem like now Senator Culver has about that 2-to-1 lead that we would expect in that election. Also on this slide here, you'll see a note about the hotel tax. And that tax being under threat, as we're unfortunately somewhat used to here in Pennsylvania, as we see certain co-sponsorship memos and legislative suggestions pop up here and there throughout the session. On January 13th, Representative Roy from Erie and Crawford counties circulated a co-sponsorship memo with intentions to introduce legislation that would amend the hotel tax. It would give counties the option of continuing to use funding to promote tourism if they want, but would also add an option that counties can use that money to help fund EMS systems in their respective counties if they so choose. He notes in the memo that the EMS crisis that we're seeing regarding funding, we certainly understand the various regional struggles that are happening here in Pennsylvania on that subject. That said, we also understand that tourism funding here in Pennsylvania is significantly underfunded. And it's important to members here at PRLA that we do what we can to preserve that funding, especially when the assessment, the fee is coming directly from travel tourism revenue. I will note that Representative Roy has introduced a few pieces of legislation, all that include different approaches in an attempt to solve the same funding crisis that he references in this co-sponsorship memo. Legislation has not been filed. We'll certainly be keeping a close eye on this, with the House not returning anytime soon to session, likely not till the end of the month or perhaps March. There likely will not be much immediate activity in the near future on the subject. I think what was most disappointing about the language in the co-sponsorship memo was just the way tourism efforts and tourism marketing was addressed. I know many of our members had reached out and found the language quite disappointing. My biggest suggestion, our biggest suggestion at this point, continue meeting with your legislators, and if you're not already, consider meeting with your legislators to explain to them the significance of tourism funding, tourism marketing, the trends that you're seeing in the tourism space, and the great work that many of the organizations we represent are doing. Many of you already have very solid relationships with your legislators. I see a few of you on this call who I know meet with them on a regular basis. For those who have not met with their new electeds, feel free to reach out to Lauren, Joe, or I, or anybody on our team for any guidance. On the PRLA website, there's an advocacy tab, and if you go to that section of the website and you scroll down a little bit, there's a form on that landing page that you can download with language that you can consider using to send to your senator or your representative to introduce yourself and your organization. It's kind of boilerplate language that you can feel free to repurpose. Just kind of insert your name, your organization, And this is just an introductory letter. There's no ask. It's just, hello, I'm here. This is what I'm doing. And I'd love an opportunity to sit down with you to explain a little bit more about the work we're doing at our organization. It's great to build those relationships now and establish a foundation prior to any legislation moving. I also want to just briefly here note and address the local hotel room occupancy tax. We've heard a lot from members lately. This is something that you guys know has been administered at the local level. It's collected by county treasurers, ultimately used for tourism promotion efforts. I've heard from some members in various different regions of the state where they're dealing with their local counties looking to use that tax in ways that may not align with Act 18. And I just want you to know that if you're dealing with any of those issues, PRLA can be a resource for you. Please feel free to reach out to us if we could help navigate, if we could help guide. We have different resources that you can consider, and we'd be happy to help navigate that process. Also happy to answer any questions or address any concerns on today's webinar, but please always feel free to reach out to us if PRLA could assist. And with that, going to turn it back over to Lauren now to talk specifically about some of our priorities that came out of the PRLA policy retreat last week.
Thanks, Zach. Our PRLA policy committee did meet last week in Harrisburg to discuss our legislative priorities going into this new session. We've got some new and some recurring issues on our agenda for this year. We've already begun our 2023 lobbying efforts to continue our push for an increase in the liquor licensee discount from 10% to at least 15%. This is something we've advocated for in the past. In past sessions, this bill has passed the House. We are hoping to get it all the way across the finish line this year. We think it's more important than ever to our members, given the PLCB's recent price increases. Additionally, in the liquor space, we're lobbying to make permanent a provision in Act 81 of 2021 that allows for the sale of alcohol for off-premises catered functions by licensees with no restriction on the number of events. This provision expires at the end of 2024, at which point it would revert back to the 52 event limit, but we are hoping to have that change made permanent this year. We see it as a win-win for both our members and for the Commonwealth as well. We've got some other priorities to make sure our members are able to thrive in the current business climate, including helping our members be able to offer affordable insurance to their employees through association health plans, and things that we've long supported, such as protecting the tip credit and the tipping system. We're also involved in numerous other conversations taking place in the legislature on things like recreational marijuana, which could be a hot topic this year as well. I'm going to throw it back to Zach, and he's going to talk about a few of our lodging and tourism priorities for this year.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Like we noted, the PRLA Policy Committee met last week for the annual retreat in Harrisburg. Great discussion, and just it was great to reconnect with members and kind of explore some of the new trends that we're seeing, the new challenges that are out there, and then take that into account to kind of help give Lauren and I our marching orders as we head to the Capitol this year. Over the next couple of weeks, we're working to finalize and synopsize these priorities in a more formal way. So please stay tuned to our daily update. As soon as we have that material available, we plan to publish it there. From a lodging and tourism perspective, a few of the priorities that came out of this meeting, we're going to continue our push and to advocate for increased tourism funding for statewide tourism efforts here in Pennsylvania. And in the past, we've asked to increase that line item from about the $4 million number to $20 million. However, based on research that recently came out of a report we commissioned with Tourism Economics that many of you are familiar with, we've adjusted that ask to $39 million because the research we received from Tourism Economics suggests that if Pennsylvania wants to truly maximize its potential in the tourism space, and we want to really compete with surrounding states in this space, $39 million is the number necessary. And so really excited for some efforts that are in the works right now to get this message to the legislature and the new administration. Another priority that came out of the policy committee retreat was our efforts we want to continue doing what we can as an industry to combat human trafficking. Obviously, we know this is an important issue for us to be on the front lines and do what we can to combat human trafficking, and that means training on the front lines, training employees in the lodging industry. Many of you already know that PRLA has a partnership with the Best Alliance training program. That is training that is offered to employees and staff in the lodging space for free as a member of PRLA, and I can throw a link in the chat here with more information on that. But this was also identified as a top priority for the association. It's also a top priority for our national partners, the AHLA. Another priority that we've identified is the advocacy work for enabling legislation related to tourism improvement districts. So you may all know that this is kind of a carryover issue from legislation we've pushed in the prior legislative session. And then additionally, I would note that we are looking to protect and preserve the hotel tax for tourism purposes. That was something that surfaced in conversation last week. So those are kind of our lodging and tourism priorities. These are kind of our priorities in general at the state level. Like I noted, we're working with our comms team right now to kind of formalize and synopsize these priorities. As soon as we have that ready, we're going to put that in the daily update, and we'll also send to our committee members and the board as well. So with that, Lauren, did you want to cover kind of some local issues, starting with maybe Allegheny County?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. I did want to make a quick note with respect to what we've got kind of going on in our western part of the state. I've had questions from a number of our members about the plastic bag ban going into effect in Pittsburgh, supposedly in April. If you recall, Pittsburgh City Council passed that ordinance last spring to be taking effect in mid-April of this year. We've been in communication with the City Council on this issue over the last year. They are supposed to be releasing some educational materials for businesses who will be affected by this ban, and the ban will ban single-use plastic bags in almost all instances. We've had some questions from members about how that will be implemented, and we're waiting for Pittsburgh City Council and specifically the bill sponsors office to send us some information that we can pass along to all of you, and then that you in turn can pass along to your customers. So we're waiting to hear on that, and we'll certainly be passing along that information once we have it. I would say in general for 2023, we are really looking forward to engaging Pittsburgh City Council and Allegheny County in general more heavily than in the past, and really looking forward to building some solid relationships out in the western part of the state. That said, we've got some exciting things going on in the eastern part of the state in Philadelphia as well. So I will throw it to Zach to update all of you on some things coming down the pike in Philadelphia.
Yeah, lots happening in Philadelphia. There's a mayoral election, as many of you know, on the horizon, likely to be decided in the May primary. About 10 or 11 candidates have entered the race so far. It depends on if your definition is whether they've established a committee or whether they've just filed for office. We have 10 that have filed, and I believe we have 11 that have filed, but I believe we have 10 that have formed committees. But nonetheless, we've got about a dozen people who have entered that race, most who have vacated city council positions and other positions in city government in order to run. It is a rule in Philadelphia. You cannot occupy a city office and also run for a city office at the same time. And so those officials that were on city council had to vacate their city council seats. Unlike, I would note, any of the people in the race who occupy state offices, where they can retain that seat at the state level and also run for office in Philadelphia. We've been working closely with the Philadelphia chapter to identify top concerns in Philadelphia. The two items that continue to surface crime. So in general, violence, the theft, the vandalism we're seeing and how it impacts the industry. And then the other issues revolve around streeteries and potential improvements that we can make to the streetery program this next year. We've started planning those initial meetings with council to push our priorities forward. We just had a meeting earlier this week with Councilman Driscoll in Philadelphia, one of the newer members on council, and I'm happy to report that Councilman Driscoll is very interested in working with PRLA to explore some improvements to the outdoor dining program currently. Our idea to put the hospitality and tourism industries front and center is kind of finally coming to fruition here. This is something we talked about with some of you over the past couple months, but the planning is full steam ahead at this point. I'm happy to report that we are going to be hosting a mayoral candidates forum on March 14th. It's going to be at 7 p.m. on March 14th. It's going to be at the Michael Nutter Theater at the Pennsylvania Convention Center, right across from Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia. It's going to be very exciting. I couldn't think of a more fitting backdrop than the very theater named after a former Philadelphia mayor. We're really excited for this event, and it's going to be a forum specifically about hospitality, travel, and tourism concerns. And so it's really a first of its kind. This is being done in partnership with 6ABC as our media sponsor. They will be streaming the event everywhere you stream 6ABC, starting with 6abc.com. We're also partnering with GPHA, the Hotel Association in Philadelphia, Visit Philly, the Philly CVB, the Independence Visitor Center, and of course, the Convention Center. We're super excited about hosting this event. More details eventually will be published on some supplemental events that we're planning before and after, but we're really excited about this. The RSVPs have started to come in this week, and again, March 14th. And please reach out to us with any questions. Also in Philadelphia, I just wanted to queue up some discussion here on short-term rental regulations. I want to talk briefly about a recently enacted and now enforced piece of legislation that many of you were a part of pushing back in 2021. Airbnb, one of the first in the alternative accommodation space, is more than a decade old at this point. It started more than a decade ago. Short-term rentals, we know, obviously impact hotels, bed and breakfast, campgrounds as well. Over the years, we've seen, though, especially in places like Philadelphia, short-term rentals are also impacting other spaces, like residents being concerned about local rent prices, also potential homeowners who are being kind of squeezed out of the market by investors looking to buy short-term rental properties. As of January 1st, new regulations in Philadelphia are being imposed on short-term rentals. Short-term rental operators will now need 2 licenses and a zoning permit in order to legally operate in the city of Philadelphia. The permits, from what I understand, cost a few $100s. The online platforms also will have to confirm that rental is licensed in order to list them on the platform itself. Admittedly, some of these rules have actually been in place since 2015, but then there were new regulations and new rules implemented in 2021 via legislation. 2 categories now of short-term rentals, and they each have their own license and permitting requirements. There's those rentals where the host lives at the property, and then there's rentals where the host doesn't live at the property, and there's different kind of criteria for each. No matter what category that a host falls under, they are going to need a Philadelphia business income and receipts tax account and a commercial activity license. Both would be free and are requirements for any individual company to operate in Philadelphia. But this is something that prior to 2023 has not really been being enforced. Hosts will also be able to consider what's called a limited lodging license, which has its own separate fees and regulations associated with it. I'm not going to get too much more in the weeds on all of this right now, but just wanted to mention this for the group. Please feel free to reach out to us at PRLA if you have any questions about these new regulations in this realm. We can, of course, help provide any information. With that, we want to move on to PRLA's plan for legislative success. I know one big question that I'm sure is on your mind. We've got a lot that we're working on. How do we plan to engage the General Assembly and kind of push these priorities forward? Along with the rest of the PRLA team, we've started planning a handful of government affairs initiatives, like our Lobby Day event, that's going to allow members and PRLA to engage on the issues most important to us. One of those events is going to be our second annual advocacy boot camp. We plan to host that event in State College on Wednesday, March 15th and Thursday, March 16th. The team will be putting together a program that will train operators and any staff that you may want to register for the event on being effective advocates for the industry. We're going to take a peek behind the political curtain. We're going to plan to discuss what really moves and blocks legislation in Harrisburg. We'll be providing some tips and tricks on how you can consider communicating with your elected officials, some of the do's and don'ts. Last year, it was a really fun and productive conversation. The feedback I have received from members is that there was a lot that they learned, and we hope it's as educational this year. We're also going to be hosting a reception, and we'll likely have a legislator or a former legislator in town to join us for that conversation as well. Secondly, here, the Leadership Forum, the Legislative Day event on May 1st and May 2nd, PRLA will be hosting our Leadership Forum and the return of our Legislative Day, our Lobby Day event. From a legislative perspective, this will be an opportunity to show up at the Capitol in force as a unified industry to help push our priorities forward. It's also important that we update our legislators, our elected officials on the trends, challenges we're seeing. They're going to likely have a lot of questions on what kind of difficulties your business might have encountered recently and currently. The other part of the event is the PRLA Leadership Forum, the annual Leadership Forum that we host. That event and this event in general will be hosted at the Hilton Harrisburg, open to all members. It will include keynote speakers, dinner. We'll be publishing more information soon as the detail begins falling into place. But really excited for that, for the Leadership Forum, the Legislative Day event, and of course the boot camp already seems like it's right around the corner. Lauren, did you want to give some background on the district office day blitz we're planning and also the legislator roundtables?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. As Zach mentioned, we really this year want to focus on getting PRLA members in front of their legislators in district as often as possible. We really want to build some of our relationships with our legislators. And I'll note, I don't know if either of us mentioned this earlier, but we do have about 50 new members of the State House and Senate. We want to get to know all of those folks. I think it's always advisable to meet and engage with and build a relationship with your legislator before you need them for something. And we want to really facilitate that for PRLA this year. We are going to continue with our legislator roundtables. We're going to be starting those in the spring in various parts of the state. We're doing sort of a hybrid approach this year. We're doing legislator roundtables in some areas, and then we're going to do more targeted district office visits in some of our more geographically diverse chapters. We're also planning a district office day blitz where we're going to encourage all of our members to schedule an appointment in district with their legislator on about the same day or the same week. And we're going to send everyone talking points and make sure that you've got all of the materials that you need to have a really successful meeting with your legislator. I also want to put out to everyone on this call, if you have a relationship with your legislator or you want to schedule on your own a meeting with your legislator, but don't entirely feel comfortable doing that, Zach and I are more than happy to help facilitate that. We're more than happy to come out and attend that meeting with you. We want to make sure that legislators have a touch point with a PRLA member, every legislator at some point this year. And we're really going to work hard to make sure that happens. And as Zach and I have explained, we've got sort of a number of different paths that we are going to use to pursue that this year. And so with that, I think we did cover a lot of ground today. If anyone has any questions, we're happy to try to answer. And I really want to thank everyone for attending today. Looks like we do have a question. Can you review where we are legislatively with respect to liquor to-go sales from RSHs, both drinks and bottles? Yeah, the cocktails to go legislation, which is something that we've been supportive of for the past couple of years, has sort of, at least in the last year or two, really been tied to the ready to drink issue. I think there's some pretty bipartisan support for cocktails to go. We're certainly very supportive of that. It gets a little more controversial with the RTD issue. Which, at least as of last session, the governor was not interested in moving forward with. He didn't want to sign legislation, including something that would move forward with RTDs. I see that same dynamic probably continuing this year. I think that component of it probably will hold up the cocktails to go component. But we are still supportive of both RTDs and cocktails to go. But I do see some roadblocks, the same roadblocks this year as were there last year. Zach, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. And I think there's just some political realities that we're going to have to kind of take a temperature check on when they return to session. We've got, Susan, I think it's a great question. And we continue to hear from members about it. We also hear from legislators about it who seem like they want to champion the issue. With the new legislature coming into town, you never know kind of which way the political winds will be blowing. But like Lauren noted, it kind of got clogged up in a political mess last time around as it started to blend with the RTD issue. I will note, while we're on the subject, that PRLA has reestablished our quarterly meetings with the PLCB. We just recently had a meeting with the PLCB, and it was a great conversation with some of the board members and also the staff there. And yeah, I guess the last note I'll make on that subject, Susan, and for anybody else interested in that issue, if you have legislators passionate about that in your region, please let us know so that we can perhaps engage them on the subject. I also see a question here from Bob Raffetto. Bob, I did put in the chat here, the landing page you can visit to download that form that you can then reach out to your legislators with. And when I was looking at that landing page, I also was reminded the great work our comms team did. They also included a link on there where you can find your legislators. So not only is there a form that you can, a form letter you can send to your legislator, but if you don't necessarily know who your elected officials are, there's a link on there for anybody to consider exploring. You could just put in the address of your business or your home, and it'll kind of spit out who your new legislators are with contact information. Thank you for the kind words, John, Jenny, really appreciate that. Nice to see you all. We put some links in there for the human trafficking prevention training that's currently on the website. I thank you, Heidi, for the link to the boot camp. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Appreciate that. And it's been great working with you as chair. Thank you for your leadership.
All righty. So we'll give a moment to see if anyone else has any questions. But thank you so much to everyone for joining today. Thank you to both Lauren and Zach and the entire PRLA team who behind the scenes helps put this program together for us. We really appreciate the work that they all do on behalf of the industry. And I would just end, as we're waiting to see if there's any more questions, with a reiteration of the point that the relationships that each of you have with your legislators are really the difference maker in terms of our ability to see success this year and in future years. With so many new folks, it's important that they have a connection personally to one of us in the industry. So we really appreciate in advance all your help in developing those relationships, and we stand ready to assist you in that should you need. All righty. Seeing no additional questions, but some nice thank yous. We appreciate your time today. Have a great rest of the day.